Hello, everyone, and good morning and afternoon. Welcome to another episode here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and Wandering Scribe. And today we have a special guest making their official debut here on the channel. Now, if you remember a few episodes ago, I made two videos showcasing the various graphic novels, comics, and books that I was able to get at the convention. But I also made sure to name drop quite a few other creators who I had the privilege of meeting. And today's guest is one of those creators that I met at LA Comicon. My guest today has been a fan of epic stories and quests like the Odyssey, the Iliad, Greek mythology, Sinbad the Sailor, the Lord of the Rings, and many more since he first read them in elementary school or saw them brought to life on the big screen. Born in South Central LA and being brought up primarily in Watts and Compton, came with many hardships and struggles. However, through the advice and encouragement of mentors and friends, my guest thought to turn those struggles, traumas, and lessons into triumphs, creating an epic universe of characters and stories to help him cope with and rationalize with the lessons he learned in life so far. Writing comics since 2017, he has honed his craft into the collection of stories he's presenting through his company, Anansi Comics, for the enjoyment and enlightenment of all. And according to his official website on Anansi Comics, welcome to the world of the Dark Ones. And to tell us all about that and more, let's give a huge round of applause to our guest today, comic writer, publisher, owner, and an amazing independent creator, Jamal Anansi. Jamal, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you, man. I appreciate you, man. It's an honor to be here, man, with you.
Awesome. So before we dive into Anansi Comics and, of course, your comics that you showed me at LA Comic Con, is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners?
Also, just came out with new comic, one shot, 24 page, one shot called The God Blade. It's an exciting story set 800 years in the future. It's a major story. I went for y'all to check that out too. So yeah, I got that, on my website. Y'all can see a lot of it on my page as well. Yeah. So, and this is the big book. This is the volume. Oh, it's a little blur right now, but it's all right. You can see this on my website and on my Instagram page as well too. Yeah, it's a lot of good and exciting stuff, man. And I just came back from San Diego Comic Fest. First time they had it back in a couple of years, man. It was dope. So a lot of comics, man. Most importantly, I met a lot of awesome, great, spectacular people. Made, just a lot of good friends, a lot of new faces, man. It was a great experience, man. I'm really looking forward to coming back to San Diego Comic Fest next year, definitely.
Awesome. And I have to say, viewers and listeners, when I went to Jamal's stand at LA Comic Con and he told me about the world of the Dark Ones, I was entranced by the world building and the comic itself. It's so good. And as much as I would love to explain it, viewers and listeners, I'm going to turn over to the creator, Jamal, to tell us all about the world and what the story entails. So, Jamal, you have the
Yeah.
floor.
All right, thanks, man. I appreciate it. What the story is basically about um, this God, right? This nefarious evil God who travels around the universe, not just consuming worlds, but consuming the life force and their souls as well. And he makes it to Earth. Well, before he makes it to Earth, he makes it to Mars, right? And that's why Mars look how it looks right now. He makes it to Earth, and he's getting ready to, devour, the Earth and take a soul and life force. Mother Earth, she's sentient, and she doesn't want that to happen. So she said, "No, please don't kill me." He said, "No, why not? This is what I do." She said, "Look, how about you give me some of your blood and some of your DNA, and from that, I'll make my own angels, my own version of humans, which is us right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once we do that, once we die, our souls will be more potent. So you don't have to go search the universe for worlds of souls to eat. You can just farm us, and I'll save my life, and you'll save you the trip as well." So he was like, "Okay, that sounds reasonable." Now, fast forward to present day where man is destroying the world, and by pollution, whether through nuclear disasters or nuclear war, or just us obliterating the planet through global warming, and all the horrible things we're doing to it and to each other. And Mother Earth knows that this is untenable because eventually we're going to destroy the world. And once that happens, Osiris is going to be like, well, it's no point then. He's going to consume and eat and take her life force and move on, leave her like Mars as well. And she definitely does not want that to happen. And so, also using this blood, she been for thousands and thousands of years creating her own gods. So she created 10 whole gods to help protect her from him and avenge
Mm.
her and be her guardian. And out of those 10 guys, right now I'm concentrating on just two: the Jaku, the god of death, and Okimi, his twin sister, the goddess of life. Yeah, so yeah, it's a really exciting story. So you can follow this journey of these guys as they fight against Osiris and his horde of trillions of angels slash army. So it's a really exciting story, man. I'm really glad to bring it to you, the people, to the world, and not just that story, but it's a whole lot of side stories as well. Within that universe, create a very rich and vivid world with a lot of different characters, a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different people and villains to populate it to give people a lot of excitement, a lot of joy. So I'm really looking forward to everybody catching and reading it.
Awesome. And it is a really good read, viewers and listeners. At the end of this video, I will link down below in the description of Jamal's website to go and check out The World of the Dark Ones and his other comics, because it is a really, really great series, especially when it's created also the artistry by other creators as well. And there's one in particular which I remember seeing at LA Comicon. It has this very cute, innocent style to it upon first glance. But if you read it, as well as the others in the story, it is not anything cute. It is a very bleak, dangerous world. And honestly, that's what I love so much about, fantasy and world building, because the possibilities are limitless. And speaking of creating new worlds, Jamal, I'm going to now turn back to you again, and I want to explore a little bit more about your creative side. Now, in your bio, you were inspired by, Greek mythology, the Odyssey, the Iliad, Lord of the Rings, and many other stories. So, would you say that you were always a creative person growing up?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Always enjoyed not just reading but writing as well. My mother, she was a special ed teacher, and so she used those same skills and techniques, flashcards, phonics, things like that. And she taught, she applied them to me so much so that I was reading and writing my name by the age of 2. And I was always, since elementary school, been able to read several grade levels above my own and comprehend and also write several grade levels above my own. So using all that to, uh, dive even deeper into books and find that love and that joy from them. That was, everything to me. And I always been, a writer from, to simple writing classes and assignments in, elementary school, junior high, and high school, to actually taking, English class in high school, and then creative writing in college and English class in college, to where you gotta, expound and write essays, things like that. All these, things and all these classes were able to provide me with tools in order to further enrich my my writing experience. So just gain skills, because I'm forever a student. I'm
Mm.
forever a fan of of a good story, any story, because there's always something you can learn from. Even if it's a bad story, it's always things you can learn from bad stories as well. It's okay, what did they do wrong? What did they do wrong? And what might I do to improve that so that I can enjoy it more? Or so the next person, can enjoy that story or something like that. So there's lessons to be gained by all. But yeah, I was always been a writer. Always had this vivid imagination. Especially from reading all them stories and watching TV and just being a fan of just pop culture, and just engrossing myself in that. And you sit in a theater or at home, and you're like, man, I wish I could do that. That's an amazing story. What if this happened? What if that happened? And so I just took it to the next level, and I just started, writing my own stories. And man, here we are now.
You know what? I have to agree. I have the same mindset. I'm always continuously learning, reading other stories, seeing how people take a topic that I'm kind of working in and seeing, okay, what was their interpretation of this, or how they approach this type of story. So I'm very much the same way. So Now, also in your bio, you began writing comics in 2017. So, what would you say, Jamal, was your aha moment when you realized you want to transform your passion for writing and telling stories into a business?
Well, I started writing it just as a escape, just to escape from my situation because I was in prison. I was in prison since I was 19 years old because I was a gang member. I'm from Compton, so
Mm.
you know, I was living that life, man. I ruined it, to a certain degree. Ended up, in prison. So being in there and living that life, it was bleak, it was miserable, it was a horrible way to live and exist. But yet, me and others like me, found a way to, to strive and to find better and more productive things to do. Not just going to self-help classes for anger management or conflict resolution or even going to school because they had school up in there as well. College classes I could take as well. I made sure I did all these things in order to build myself up and educate myself because I didn't want to be stuck on pause. And away from those things, I wanted a way to deal with all the things I have dealt with in my life. And so writing and journaling was very important to me, and I always had stories as well. So occasionally I would write stories too. And it wasn't until 2017 when I ran into a good friend, mentor, big brother of mine, Hashima Jinsai, who, came by my cell one day. He was walking by because he was a porter, basically, sweeping up the tier and everything. And he seen a big stack of comics on my desk. He was like, "Hey, man, what's up, man?" Because I had just got there, transferred from another prison. He's like, "Hey, what's up, man? How you doing? I see you like comics, man. What's going on?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, I got it. I lied. I'm a writer." He said, "Oh yeah, well write me something." Now, up to that point, I have never written a comic before or a
Ah,
comic
okay.
script. I had just written like prose and like because I read a lot of books, so I'm writing my little stories like that. So I'm like, okay, for sure, I got you. I'm gonna write a story for you. He said, "Yeah, I'm gonna bring it back to you tomorrow." So he's like, "Okay, cool." So I'm like, "Okay, well let me start." And at that time, I was reading. I had just got done reading the first couple books of the Drizzt series by R.A. Salvatore, on top of all the other comics I read. So I had that that dark elf, idea in mind. And why
Right.
is it make sure our society, why is that bad? Why is a society where the people have black skin, why are they considered evil? Things like that. So while reading that, I had these thoughts in my head. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe let me come up with this little story. So that was the inception of my initial story, which was The Godless, which is the original Dark One story. Now, the Chronicles, the thing
Okay.
that's on sale right now, and even the Godblade, those are essentially spinoffs, but it's not part of my main story. So I wrote essentially the first four issues of the Godblade, and I mean of the Godless, and I gave that to him the next day. And he was like, "Man, this is good. I wasn't expecting." I was up all night, probably like to 2 o'clock in the morning, writing it and then rewriting it, making sure it was neat so he can understand it and it was legible. So I gave it to him that morning. He was like, "Man, this is. I wasn't expecting this. This is good. This is different." Because a lot of times when people write stories, especially where in a pen or something like that, it's an urban novel. It got to do with guns and drugs and gangs and stuff like that. And I was like, "Nah, man, I live that life. I don't want to keep continuing that
Mm.
mindset and that lifestyle or promoting that negative lifestyle. This the destruction of our own people and our own community as a form of entertainment and promoting that ideology. I didn't want to do that because I knew the consequences, of that lifestyle and of that way of
Okay.
thinking. And I want to do something different. Especially through you any type of fantasy story or any type of story in general. It's always about teaching a lesson or teaching about morals and integrity and self improvement and what it means to be brave, especially in the face of impossible odds, and I love those stories. And so I took uh those ideals, as well as my experiences throughout my life, because they say write what you know, and I,
Hmm.
began writing, and that was how the journey began.
Wow. Holy mackerel. That's actually a really very powerful story, Jamal. Thank you for sharing that part. So now we're going to fast forward to the creation of the Dark Ones, a series from the initial conception. So when you made the decision to take the Dark Ones and actually make a series out of it, what were your initial goals you had in mind for yourself as a writer and a storyteller, but also for your prospective audience?
Well, when I began writing 2017, at that time, I was in emotions of, trying to get out of, prison as well because the laws had changed and it became possible for me to be granted, early parole. And so in transition to that, and working towards that and doing all the work required for that, I also thought about, me and my aspiring comic book career, because that's what I want to do. That's one of my primary goals I want to, achieve once I got out, because it gave me so much happiness, so much joy, and so much fulfillment. And so I was thinking, because I had wrote so much now up to this point, when I was thinking about, okay, it's a good chance I might get out. Like, how will I introduce this story to the world? Because I could start with issue number one and go from there, but I'm like, I had written so much. Like, I had written 43 issues, 43 complete issues of uh, the Godless. I had written 43 that's already done. And then I had did another spinoff, because I was all the whole attention. Like, I just want to write the spinoff where, after the gods win, what would that world look like? World building, not just world build, but culture build as well, because of
Mm-hmm.
all the different races and casts. So I had got it so engrossed in that. So that's 26 issues in the spinoff, which is called The Dark Ones, After the Fall. And so I got that done as well. But I had all that. But I'm like, okay, well, how can I introduce this to the world and get people interested in my story and in my world, and get them, just to, start buying. So I'm like, okay, let me create sort of an introduction, to that. So I started with writing short stories and mini comics, 8-page mini comics, a series. One of them was Ebony and the Golden Gun. Another one was The Ghost and the Prophet. Ebony and the Golden Gun. That's the one you was talking about. The one
Mm-hmm.
illustrated by Alberto Calafiore. He's from Italy. Amazing guy. His style is like Disney, but I write like
Yes.
I write kind of like dystopian, Walking Dead type, the genre like that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, them two had a baby, and it's as Ebony and
Yes.
the Golden Gun, right? So and it's that, and it's also, the Ghost and the Prophet, and it's stories like that, as well as other 14-page stories like the Jackal, the God of Death, and his twin sister, Community God's Life. They both have their own individual stories, as well as another story called Nightwalkers, like things like that, to where I can introduce the world, the concept, the characters, and basically entertain people. So after they read this introduction, this first little initial, Dark Ones, volume, uh, everything I write after that, they can just enjoy. Because they already know what's going on. They already know the rules to my world. They already know the basic cast of characters. They already know the structure, the core, structure. So now I can just write and write about characters and people can just have fun and enjoy reading it. That was my intention.
Nice. So then after you got your whole team of artists, and also, you're talking with them saying, okay, here's the story that I am thinking of. This is what's going to happen. And once you finally got, like, the layout that you wanted before going into publication, what was the initial reaction like? Was it positive, negative, or was it kind of in the middle?
Well, as far as the reaction to my comic when people first started reading it,
When people first started reading it, what were the initial reactions like?
man, they love it. Like everybody, I haven't heard one bad thing about it. Only bad thing I had about it, have heard about it, is like, okay, where's the next one? Like, this is it? Like, where's the rest? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? So that's good. I built up anticipation. I built up that, that core, audience, that core, that's a feeling like when you read, like, man, this is good. Like, where's the rest? And I used to tell folks and the homies when I was in the pen, man, like when I first, started, writing, and he said, how big where you want this to go? What you want to do? I'm like, man, honestly, if I write and complete the comic book and then, get in front in somebody's hands and they read it and be like, oh man, this is dope. Like, where's the next one? That's enough. You know what I mean? Like, just that feeling of, I wrote something worthwhile that somebody enjoyed, and then they're looking forward to reading the next one. Like, that means everything. And of course I'm gonna go,
Hmm.
farther than that, but it's just that initial, yes, that's that validation. Like, I wasn't wasting my time this whole time, even though I know I wasn't, but it's just like dope to where I can,
Right.
follow my dreams as far as, all the comic books I read and enjoyed, and I can, sit down and have my own tables and, talk about my story and the characters and how it influenced my life, and, how stories come from events that happen in my life. Like, all that's been like an amazing experience. So yeah, it's been all good reception, man. Everybody loves my book, man. I can't wait to bring more to Dark Ones, the world of Dark Ones in the universe, to the people.
Awesome. Now, would you also agree, and I think you kind of did answer this just now, that the initial reaction and the reactions thereafter validated your goals, that you want to tell an amazing story, but one that also told a meaning behind it, something that people can resonate to.
Right, right. Because it's all like, even in the Dark Ones and the Chronicles, like you read, if you get the volume or even the issues, like it has journal entries in there, because like I said, all the stories come from events in my life, even from the Jackal, the God of Death, where he's, basically he's fighting against, Cyrus. You see a big battle and everything, but that core story, about him and the gods fighting against Osiris. Is really about us as the people, fighting against the system that oppresses us all. We have to realize that, we have to, really join together as one and realize that we all being messed over, by the same people. They want us to fight against each other. They want us to be divided, whether it's not just Bloods and Crips, but Republicans and Democrats, blacks, whites, Mexicans, Muslims and Jews. They want us to consistently and continuously fight against each other, because as long as we fighting against each other, we're not concentrating on Osiris, who's sucking the life out of all of us. And has this whole system that's oppressing and keeping all of us down, keeping us from our full potential. So that's where that core, the larger story comes from. But it's also smaller stories that have to deal with things in my life, like as far as even Ebony and the Golden Gun. Not just that gun is not just about the dangers of guns, which is obvious to all, but also how people can abuse it, and also how it can ruin your life. And also, like, the thing that she has fairies and all like that is about following your intuition, following your gut, and what happens when you don't. A lot of times, you have your gut feelings and your intuitions, but you ignore them, or you think like, nah, I'm tripping, like I'm just overthinking, let me just, you know what I mean, let me just do this anyway. And the whole time, your gut and your feeling, that's your spirit, that's God, or whatever you believe in, your ancestors, or however you believe looking out for you. They trying to give you a hint and push you in the right direction. So it's like when you ignore that and all the consequences that come from that, that's that lesson as well. And that's what happened to me, at times in my life as well, to where I had to really trust my gut and my intuition, and go for what, what I know, what feels good, so that's what that's about. But it's not even just that, but even the Ghost and the Prophet, is about me. It's loosely based on not just me, but it's a composite amalgamation of not just me, but other people I know, grew up with and in prison or in the neighborhood, who lived this, gang lifestyle, this gang violent, lifestyle, and have regrets from it because they wasted their lives, their ruined lives, they ruined their communities. And you don't realize that until you make it, you get older, which rarely happens in a gang lifestyle, because we only make it past a certain age, 21, 22, maybe 25, before we're either dead or in jail. But once you're in jail and you get educated and you learn about not just yourself, but your role and who you are as a person, as a black man in this situation, in this world, and as a human being living in societies where, in a community, to where, why are we destroying each other, whether through gangs or through violence or through crime or through poison? Why are we destroying each other? Like, that makes no sense. Like, if regardless of what you believe, especially if you grew up in the hood, you believe that, oh, they're against us, it's this white folk or these essays or the system. Like, okay, that might be fine. That those things may or may not be true. But however, you being a gang member, you selling drugs, you committing violence against your own people, you tagging on the wall, you lowering property values, you doing all these things to destroy yourself and your own community. It's not nobody else doing it. It's what we're doing. We're doing to ourselves. And that's what I want people to realize too. And what Ghost is, realizing he has a lot of regrets from those things. Now he wants to, fix those things by doing good deeds and being a hero. He got tired of being a villain. He didn't look at himself as a villain before, but now it's like, man, I was a horrible person. Well, let me try to do something better. Let me try to do something positive. Let me try to make a meaningful, positive difference in this world, at least while I'm here. And now he has the power to do so because he's Night Elf. So it's a whole lot of things that parallel my life and the lessons I've learned, and I've just translated those things into, my stories and my characters. So that's one thing that I really love about writing as well, to where you can put all your life experiences into, your stories, and have people, enjoy them as well as learn from them. So yeah.
Definitely, 100%. Man, that was like a really, really powerful message, Jamal. And again, thank you for that. I'm probably going to be saying thank you a lot in this interview, but you know what? Your words are very, very powerful. And they actually remind me of another creator that I had on the show a few months ago who talked about, very similar things. I can't remember his name, but he was another fellow independent comic creator, and the name will come back to me probably in this interview. But actually, now from that now leads into the first reflective question, which I'm really eager to hear your thoughts on, which is, as an author and as storyteller as well, crafting a story that you're passionate about is not, an one night thing. It's a long process. It's hours and hours of revision, and then even when you get to the final stage of the revision process, it's then got to be looked at through another set of eyes to see, okay, how is the person who is not me going to interpret this story, and are they going to feel the same way that I felt when I created this story. And of course, now in digital age, there are so many platforms for independent creators to showcase their work, but there is also a higher level of anxiety as well as imposter syndrome. And I bring this up because there is truth to that, because for independent creators who really want to showcase their work, we want to get our audience, but we don't know if they're going to be well received or people are going to take us, seriously going into a business that is dominated by some of the titans of the genre. So that is nerve wracking. So for you, Jamal, when you began this journey of yours as a creator, did you have moments of anxiety and imposter syndrome? And if so, what has disciplined you to continue going forward? Like, what pushed you to share? I'll make
Okay,
sure to
yeah.
cut this part out of the interview so it doesn't look too wonky.
Oh, it's good. It's good. So what basically motivated me, kept me from having imposter syndrome. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I had those things in the beginning. Being nervous about if people were gonna receive what I wrote, how they gonna receive it, at all, well. I definitely, had those thoughts in mind. Especially when I first started writing. Well, the brother Shima, like he was gracious enough to and patient enough to actually read what I wrote. And so having him, read it and look over it and enjoying it. And because I was already a good writer, a decent writer at that time, I hadn't written comics. So writing the comic script format was new and something I was still learning to, perfect as far as just the pacing and how much information to put or not put in panels and things like that, page counts. But I had a lot of comics, so like I was a student in college, taking all those classes.
Mm-hmm.
I became a student of comics. So all the comics I had, or the comics I had brought in or I borrowed from friends, I didn't just read them. I studied them. I studied their techniques. I studied like how many panels they had on each page, how many panels they used for fight scenes, how many panels they used for talk scenes and things like that, and for regular dialogue, the page pacing, the things that I liked about comic books, the things that I didn't like about certain stories and things like that. And I took all those things and I incorporated into my own stories, my own skill set. However, like because I was, in prison, it was a lot of chaos. It was drama, fights, drugs, ODs, prison politics, things like that I had to deal with on a daily basis. The police, they messing with us and irritating us and coming to our cell and messing up, papers and anything we had just because, it was a lot of distractions. And a lot of times I'd be at my desk writing. I just sit up and I just look around like, what am I doing this for? Like I didn't know at the time if I would get out or when I would get out. I had a
Okay.
general idea, but it was like, all those things, weighing down on me. I just look at my paper. I'm like, man, what am I doing this for? Am I wasting my time? Should I be doing something, better? But writing gave me so much self-fulfillment to where after a while it wasn't about if anybody else liked it. It's about me finding, peace, my own inner peace, as I writing because it was my escape, all the chaos and all of the things that was happening around me. Like when I write my stories or when I thought about the characters in my head and the things they were going through, like that was a wonderful thing because I didn't have control of anything else in my life, but I had control of that. I had control of very little in my life. I had to control a few other things, but not a lot. Not as much as we, take for granted now, but I control that story. But I want to, not just control it because I could, not just be a guide to that world because I could, but
Mm,
also write interesting characters and write about situations where they had no control of. Because I want that, I wanted my art to imitate life
right.
and, to have that life reflected in the art so people can appreciate it. And really, I wasn't doing that consciously, but I was just telling my own experiences, my own thoughts, my own. For example, in the original story that I was writing, the God Blade, the Jackal, the God of Death, he was raised in Africa. Like he was born from Mother Tree and things like that. But at 8 years old, he became a child soldier, fighting in the
Mm,
army. And you see that frequently in Africa when, you got kids, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, and they got AK-47s, even younger than that, and they're going and killing people, things like that. Now, even though that's a true thing that happened in Africa, that's very similar to what happens in South Central LA or any inner city where kids are basically involved in gangs. And you basically tell this little kid, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, to carry a gun and shoot somebody. That same indoctrination, that same introduction to violence at such a young age, and the weight of those decisions that comes with that. But not just that weight. But when you see your friends die and you can't do anything about it, or you see them get locked up, or any horrible things that happen in the community to where you're witness of because of things you're too young to control of or to
Right.
comprehend a way to actually, maneuver and get out of, And so I built all those things into my characters to basically like give myself therapy, because we had counselors in there, we had therapists in there, but they were
Mm.
really interested in us. They were interested in the check, or they would just sit in the office and they'll just nod their head and write their little notes. But nobody really wants to talk. I can't really explain or express myself freely in those environments because they still
Right.
report to those people. You know what I'm saying? So I use my own comprehension and my own way to write out my problems and journal my problems to deal with that. And I create stories and find some type of closure within that, to find some type of understanding all the madness that was happening in my world. So, but in doing that, as far as imposter syndrome, it wasn't necessarily imposter syndrome because I was being true to myself. So I didn't feel like an imposter because I was being true to myself when I was doing. It was difficult sometimes to choose one thing over other because of the peer pressures. But I was, I mean, put it bluntly, I wasn't no I wasn't no bitch. I wasn't no, I wasn't a mark. I didn't run from nothing. I was, I was frontline. I was a gangster. I did all the things you're supposed to do in prison to get people to leave you alone, basically. So when I did decide to not just change my life for the better and to write my comics and to do something positive, it wasn't as much pushback as you expect because they had respected me plainly because I had committed violence up in there. I did a lot of things to where people can, oh, I don't know, leave him alone. Like he's kind of, that type of thing.
Mm.
So when I made a decision, like, no, I'm gonna do something better, it was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, cause I wasn't no weirdo doing it. I wasn't no scary dude. I wasn't no runner. I wasn't no buster doing these things. I was a, respected guy who had some sense about himself, who made some choices, who lived the same life as all the other gangsters in like, cause mind you, in prison where I was at the level 4 180, probably like 70, 80% of people in there had life, or had a whole lot of years, a whole lot of time. They had been there for a long time. And so being in that environment, it's a camaraderie to a degree that comes with that because even though it's a lot of violence that perpetuates in there, it's a lot of, negative things that happens. It's also when you see a guy every day for about 3, 4, 5 years, regardless of what his skin color is, what he believes in, you're gonna get cool with him. You're gonna be friendly or friends or at least friendly and know him and have conversation with him. And that's when you do that much time, those barriers break down to where you realize and start to think like, man, I really wasted my life because all these people I'm supposed to hate or not like or consider my enemies, he's cool as shit. And vice versa. He knows I'm cool. Like now I'm supposed to on the streets because we were from rival gangs, for example, I'm supposed to kill him or at least beat him up, on sight. But now that I know him, like we went to the same schools, we know some of the same people, that's with the same girls sometimes. Like it's like, oh, you went there too. It's like those, and it's like a lot of the same things, sports teams, music, people, books. It's like, wow, if it wasn't for this gang, this gang lifestyle, like we'd be best friends, we'd be bros. Like so, it's like when you start to get away from that and break that down, it's like, man, it's like I really wasted my life. I really have to grow up. So
Right.
it's not imposter syndrome, but what I did suffer from, especially once I first got out, was survivor's guilt. You know,
Okay.
it's survivor's guilt. And they, you get a lot of people from that fighting wars and things like that, and they come back and they figure like, damn, well, my whole squad died. Why am I only one, living? And I had like a large degree of that when I came home. It was just like, damn, like I know a lot of dudes in prison who work harder than me and smarter than me, and have more potential to be successful than me, but yet they're stuck in there with no way to get out. But yet I was able to get out, and it was that guilt to like, damn, like now I got that way to try and be successful out here, not just living and being free, but now it's like following through with, thriving because I know my success or failure reflects on them as well. How so? Because if I fail, if I mess up somehow up here, out here and commit another crime and I come back to prison, not only that reflects bad on the people who supported me, but reflects bad on the politicians and the people who help support these laws in order to get me out. So it was all that. It was incumbent on me to be successful, to not just make the people who supported me look good, but the politicians and all the things that the laws that are uh, being written and developed and passed that have helped kids like me that were locked up. Because remember, it's a law. Of course, everybody knows the law where you can try a kid that's young as 14 years old as an adult. But that's sick. I mean, I understand to a certain degree that kids make horrible decisions, school shootings or whatever. But it's still a 14-year-old kid who knows a whole lot of nothing. You understand what I'm saying? Who has a whole life, and you don't want that one decision, that one choice to ruin their whole lives. You're 14 years old, but you're gonna live probably till you're probably 70. Now, because that decision that you made when you're 14, 15, 16 years old, you have to pay for the rest of your life. Okay, well, what if that kid rehabilitates himself? What if he actually learns not just education, but the real true consequences of his crime? Now, what if he stays out of trouble for 10, 15, 20 years? Good behavior. Does that kid who went to prison at 14, 15, 16 years, 17 years old not deserve to get out and live a full and productive life, to get that second chance when he never really even had a first chance? Things like
Mm.
that. So all those things and all those choices, all those laws, all those people kind of weighed on me. So I, you know, I basically made a decision like, no, I'm gonna be successful. I'm gonna be successful. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make sure them people investments in me paid off. You understand what I'm saying? Like, and that's what
Mm.
I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure, and not just about them. It's about making myself proud. 'Cause I know me fulfilling my goals and my dreams and being out and being not just happy and free, but successful as well would help give them hope that their time was well spent, that their laws they spelt, the laws they passed were well spent, that the lobbying and the pushing and the long nights and all these things that people do, and all the toll of doing good deeds, because good deeds a lot of times is hard work, to get something passed or to petition or to march and to protest, to help somebody else. Sometimes not always easy, sometimes it's hard. So me being out here and being successful and coming out with something as a comic book, and me having my first table at LA Comic Con and another table at San Diego Comic Fest, and just barely being like a year and a half out, like I would hope that people will see me and my example and think like, okay, that was time well spent. It's worth it. Like, we're not wasting our time. Like I thought I was wasting my time, when I first started writing. Like, no, I'm not wasting my time, because here I am now. And people will see that work hard to influence me or to mentor me or to get these laws passed. They will see, like, you see, this is why. This is why we can't throw these kids away. This is why we can't throw these people away. This is why we can't throw this community away, because of people like him and people like that and people like that. I want to be those positive examples. I don't want to be a negative example anymore.
Wow. Holy mackerel, Jamal. That probably may have topped like the previous two that you've done in this interview, but that is really, really, really inspiring. And kind of leading into that, now we're going to look some more of like the business side, which I'm really eager to hear your thoughts on. So, as you said just now, you want to be a positive influence, a positive role model for people who read your works. So, how did Anansi Comics sort of come about? And ultimately, once Anansi Comics was created, what was sort of like your target audience for your comics and for other stories that you have down the line?
Well, Nazi Comics came about from me reading books and coming across not just Anansi the god, because Anansi is the African god of folktales and stories. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to disclaimer that he's not just the African god of folktales and stories; he is the god of folktales and stories. You understand what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
so me coming across him just by happenstance, because uh, just me reading books and me, absorbing media and trying to learn about just life in general, I kept coming across his name and his stories and his influence. And I read, I read, in prison you only have so much information to read, but I read American Gods, uh, and Anansi was featured in there, and I was, it's a whole lot of stories that I was able to get, you know,
Nice.
where Anansi is, excuse me, where Anansi is featured. Oh, that's not it. Where Anansi is featured. Think, oh, that's my electrician. I be trying to learn still. But it's things like that. But it's things like that, that he kept giving me, hints and clues that he was important. And I fell in love with his tricks, because he's like almost like Loki, but he's
Okay.
likable and he's good, and because he's a trickster, but he's often the butt of his own jokes. And he teaches through his stories. Every story that he teaches or that he tells, is a lesson, in order to, find some integrity or not to lie, or what happens when you're deceptive, things like that. You
Mm.
can use your tricks and your skills to, have certain advantages in life, but you can't use that to take advantage of anybody else. So he's always like positive. Everybody, loves Anansi. You used to always get a positive reception from people, especially around the west coast of Africa, who has Anansi stories that are familiar with Anansi. And so I took and I adapted that. It's like, wow, that's a dope name. He's my patron guide in a sense, as far as being folk tales and stories, because he's got all folk tales and stories. So I'm like, okay, I adopted his name, and I used my name and I put them together. And so I needed, some type of publishing company anyway to put behind, the Dark Ones in the universe and all like that. So I thought that was very much appropriate. Yeah. And what was the other question you asked? I forgot what was the second.
No problem. So the second part was, so once you got Anansi Comics started and you got it situated to be like the backing for God Blade and your other comics, did you have a good idea of who your target audience was as a businessman?
Uh, Teenagers, because my content is a little violent for elementary school kids, but I mean, honestly, a lot of the content they see on TV today, you know what I mean? Yeah, but I don't have no nudity. That's unnecessary. Just language and violence. So yeah, teenagers, you can be about 12 years old, 12 and up, 13 years old and up to comprehend and understand and appreciate, what I read. And the older you get, especially as my stories go on, as the time goes on, I get to come out with more of my stories. You get to see that, you'll get different things from it as you, get older. A 13-year-old might get something, but a 21-year-old or a 30-year-old might get something
Mm,
totally different. That's what I'm saying. So I have those layers built in to where people can, my audience can not only enjoy it, but really like absorb like the story and the lessons and the ideas I'm trying to, tell and pass on.
definitely, definitely. And another question, which I do want to hear your insights on, Jamal, is one that actually a previous guest of mine actually gave me and actually changed it. So initially, a question I've always had on the show was, who were the authors and creators who inspired you to be the person you are now? And a lot of authors gave, very much the same answer, except one guest. He actually turned it on me, and he actually made me realize something which is very true, which is, for independent authors and independent comic creators, we're always inspired by, the people that we've admired or stories that we have read growing up. But um, we always find this struggle where we want to show respect to the titans or the authors or the creators that have influenced us on our journey as creators and storytellers. But at the end of the day, it's our own voice that we want to showcase to our readers. And that's a very tightrope thing to do. And when he gave me that, I was like, you know what? That is very true. And we really don't take that consideration. An example, I'm sure you've gone to like a bookstore where you've seen like a book that has this tagline, the next so and so. For a reader, that's interesting. For the author, it may not be, in the sense that we don't want to be compared to anyone else because we don't want to imitate someone else. We don't want to replicate what they've done. Yes, it's nice that our readers may find a comparison, but we ourselves don't want to be compared in the sense that we're trying to be that in the long run. So, for you, Jamal, can you tell us about, how do you balance this tightrope of wanting to show your voice and individuality through your stories, but also wanting to showcase, these are the type of stories that influenced me that led to the creation of my own work?
Man, that's a real good not just question but way to phrase it. And that was a good job of that dude, because I definitely understand and I agree with him. I agree and I disagree at the same time, because because everybody is different. Because of course you're influenced by the authors and the stories you read, appreciated, and loved growing up. And so to be mentioned and to have somebody read your stuff and be like, oh, he reminds me of this person, or he reminds me of that person. Those person are idols that you like, really? Like, wow. Like on one degree, it's like amazing. On another degree, you do want to have your own individual voice, your own individual, way that you tell stories. So I definitely understand that dynamic, and I'll say that is, well, okay, well, taking a creative writing class, when I was in college, our teacher, her name is Mrs. Craig. I still
Hmm.
remember her. This was when I was in prison. She was a amazing teacher because she taught us not about just about stories and story building, but about where the stories came from. For example,
Mm.
she gave us a book. It was a lesson basically, and she was saying like stories like Red Riding Hood. You know, where it's basically everybody knows story of Red Riding Hood. A little girl goes through the forest and tries to avoid, the wolf killing her, and y'all bigger, chief her. But anyway, she basically gave us a lesson and she introduced us to a book to where it's like in the book it had like probably like 10 different Red Riding Hood stories. But each Red Riding Hood story came from a different part of the world and at different times. And at times where it was very hard to pass those type of stories along through written, so it was like
Mm.
verbal,
Okay.
orally.
Okay.
And she was explaining like it wasn't the story wasn't necessarily passed, but instead was, you know, individually created, but they're very similar. Like a lot of stories that people individually create, like different cultures, they're eerily similar as far as structure, as far as having this, you know, basic story structure where you have a little girl wandering by herself through the woods, through the forest, through the neighborhood, through anywhere by herself, and it's a villain, some type of nefarious, monster, whether it's a wolf, whether it's a tiger, whether it's a lion, whether it's a person, and they have to make it to a specific goal. And when they make it to that goal, that lion, that tiger, that wolf, that bad person is already there. And it's the basic same structure, but it's just different cultures have different ways of telling it, or even different having different endings. So you're saying that to say, like, there's nothing new under the sun. You're not going to come up with necessarily anything new. Like even reading the book, The Hero Journey. I forget who it's
Yes.
by, but it's basically like it's they saying basically like all tales and all quests, especially the best ones, are all basically written the same way, the same basic story structure. You have this
Mm-hmm.
hero, and he has either two, three, or four motivations to where why he's doing what he's doing. Either he's trying to, he's a reluctant hero, or he's somebody trying to right a wrong, or he's going on a quest to, save his family, something like that. It's like something, and he goes on a quest and he finds an old man who gives him a talisman, and that's like, and you don't even regard this talisman, or whatever the artifact is until the end of the episode or the end of the story where you need it, and it comes out and you didn't know like certain things like that, or the villain and their motivation, like this, all the same story that's retold, even with religion. Not even thinking about how like the Jesus story is and how he walked on water and the miracles he performed. Now, mind you, they have very similar or just about identical story in Egyptian mythology with Horus and how he was born, or even with the Akkadians and how they were born. Like this is very everything like recycles itself. So I'm saying all to say, even though everything recycles itself and each culture is different, they each have their own unique ways of telling those stories. So that's what I did, not only as far as just using those structures, as far as just what works in the rhythms, because it's all about finding that rhythm. It's all about, it's basic music. I'm just writing different lyrics. It might be a
Mm.
little different beat, but my lyrics are different. But the rhythm behind it, the whole pace, that's what different. That's how I kind of look at it. And I think that I've studied my craft in such a way that you won't recognize the music and you won't recognize the lyrics because you recognize them as far as just you'll feel good when you listen to them, but they won't be the same. Like they'll be so different. Like you won't recognize where the story goes. You won't know where the story goes because it's so different. So that's the tip and the trick, though. Finding those core ways that structured that stories are developed, the core structure that those stories have, and the things that work and things that don't work, or even when you read stories and the things that you like or the things that you don't like, and to emulate those things or to stay away from those things or to fix those things that you don't like to where it works for you. It's all about finding that own unique individual, signature personality to those stories that make it
Mm.
come out and make it awesome. You know what I mean? So, I mean, because think about it, even with comic books, how many times have you read Superman, Batman, and even Spider-Man or even Wonder Woman? Now, because those main stories, how many archetypes have they basically created?
Yes.
Those are four different archetypes. How
Mm-hmm.
many different times those archetypes have been recreated in other stories that you have read? Oh, this story is kind of like Peter Parker. He's kind of like Peter. Oh, that guy's he's the anti-hero. It's kind of like Batman. Oh, he's the do-gooder always. Oh, that's Superman. Oh, the strong, independent, powerful woman who wants to do. Oh, that's like Wonder Woman. They have created their own archetypes now. Know what I mean? And how many
Mm-hmm.
times like I said, have you read a comic book that you can kind of point to those characters, one of those four characters, and be like, okay, that character's kind of like that. Now that might not be the author's intention, or it might be, but still, and yet you can read those stories that's different, and you can like them or not like them. But it's all about the way that person tells it. You know, like even with Miles Morales, you know, it's basically about it's a black version of Peter Parker, essentially. It's a cooler story, but it's basically the same basic story. You know what I mean? Or even
Mm-hmm.
like you read Invincible. It's basically about,
Yes.
you know, Superman, you know, or even, you know, Walking Dead. How many times has a zombie, you know, apocalypse has happened, you know, or been told in whether through movie form or through TV form or whatever, you know, or comic book form. It's all everything's kind of regurgitated, but it's the way you put your own signature on those things
Yes.
that make it unique and make them dope and make the readers be like, oh, like, and absorb it like it's something new. When it
Mm-hmm.
is, but the core where I got the idea from, where people were inspired from, it all comes from somewhere. Everything is derivative. Everybody was inspired by somebody else, you know. So it's nothing wrong with that because that's how we do throughout history. That's how we've told stories throughout, you know, as long as we've been in existence, we've never been able to tell stories. You know, that's everybody gets it from, and that's okay. Put your own signature on it, put your own spin on it, and let it happen. Make it beautiful, make it unique, make people eager to sit around the fire with you and listen to your story. You know, that's what it's about. You know, so that's what it's about for me. It's not about copying or trying to be, you know what I mean? Like, nah, it's just about having fun and telling a good story. If you're entertained by something, that's all that matters. If you come back for a second one, that's even better. That's how I look at it,
You,
at least.
and you know what? That actually leads perfectly into the next question, which is a very important previous question, but also very deep reflective question. And I'll give a little groundwork for this, Jamal, because it's a heavy hitter. So just
It's
brace
good.
yourself. So when I started doing podcasting, it was about, I want to say 2018, and it was just audio. No one ever heard my voice. And it was around the time, I was just starting to interview just local authors that I knew. And then as time went on, going to 2021 and then 22, that's when I started branching out. And then that's when I started launching YouTube just in February of 2022 and meeting more authors, especially on Instagram, from a diverse background, wherever they are in their author's journey. And also this year of now interviewing comic creators and learning, their journeys. I've come to realize that, whether you're a traditionally published author or comic creator or independent, I've learned that there is two paths for us storytellers: to be known as a storyteller and to be a storyteller. For me, to be a storyteller or to be an author as an individual dedicated to the art of storytelling, while not solely being motivated by capital, but it's nice to get a little bit now and then. And then to be known as a storyteller or an author is an individual dedicated to the art of marketing, showcasing their work, going on every social media platform to get their name out there. Now, every path, or specifically those two paths, have their own hurdles and trials. But I definitely feel, and maybe you may have some thoughts on this, Jamal, is that for first time creators, the second path is the most enticing because we all want to get there down the road. We all want to be known as, the best author in our genre or the best comic creator in our genre. But there has to be realistic goals down the line, because ultimately at the end of the day, in this industry, in this business, there is no guarantee your debut book or your debut series is going to guarantee you the start of your legacy, in the sense that you're going to be known worldwide, being, this incredible creator. There are exceptions to that rule, of course. I've met many independent authors and comic creators whose debut series launched them to that status. That is no easy feat in and of itself. That takes a lot of time, work, and dedication. But generally speaking, for first time creators, you have this sort of roller coaster going up and down. And ultimately, you run into the problem of you're no longer creating to push your story out because you're passionate about it. You're just simply creating because there's a trend out there that aligns with your story and you're trying to get the gravy train. And that is not necessarily a good thing to do because your passion will ultimately die. So, Jamal, with all that said, what are your thoughts on this discussion that in this industry, there is no guarantee your first or your debut series is going to guarantee you the start of your legacy, but it should not deter you from creating stories if that is truly what you want to do with the rest of your life.
Yeah, man, that's that's very true. All those things are very true. But I say, what I say to that is when I got gifted with a book called Words for Pictures by Brian Michael Bendis, and it was gifted to me from Hashima Jinsai, who not only did inspire me and mentor me and did artwork for my book, but he's is a dope person. And inside that book, the words Bendis, Brian Michael Bendis, who helped one of the creators of just about a whole lot, including Miles Morales, Spider Man, him and Sarah Pacelli. But he's basically saying in the beginning of that book, he's saying, look, you're not getting if you getting into this industry for money, don't do that. Because the industry, the comic book industry is very hard for you to make money, very hard for you to, get rich because, it's such a vast market. There's so many creators in there. It's a lot of work
Mm-hmm.
you have to do. But still, and yet, I see a lot of people that are successful in the comic book industry. All right, now, mind you, that success for the money is not my motivator behind why I write my stories. I write my stories and I
Right.
write my comic because it fulfills me. It fulfills this hole on the inside that I have from, it gives me joy. It gives me peace of mind. It gives me happiness. It's fulfilling because it helps give me closure. It's like my own therapy. Even if I never make it big, it's good that I have this positive outlet without paying, thousand dollars to a therapist. I can work on my problems through writing them, you know, and it'd be nice, because I love comics that I'm doing this medium, but it would be nice if I made money. Like, okay, not only, so I'm thinking of in this way, you know, I have this passion, I have this goal, I have this talent, a talent that I just it wasn't no flash in the pan. I actually, because a lot of artists too, especially writers, they want to make a book, but they don't take in the time to become a good writer. So I had, one of the benefits of, being in prison and had that luxury is practicing my craft, from 2017. Well, all my life I've been a writer, but actually seriously, like, okay, let me specifically
Mm-hmm.
work on the specific thing of writing comics, writing comic book scripts and getting that rhythm. And then have, from 2017 to 2023 to work on my craft and develop my craft and get constructive critique to actually become, you know, confident enough, good enough to where, okay, now I can put my work out there. But still, and yet, I'm not doing this for money per se. I'm doing this for my own self fulfillment. And like I used to tell people in there, I used to say, so what do you want to do? You want to make your movies, the TV shows? I'm like, that's cool. That'd be dope. That's not why I'm doing this. I'm
Mm.
doing this because it makes me happy. And I'm not going to write something trying to follow a trend because that's what everybody likes now, like vampires. Oh,
Right.
everybody loves vampires. So I'm going to write something about vampires. No, this is not a cash grab for me. I don't do crack grabs. I don't care about money in that way. Yes, I want to do something to support myself so I can live and be comfortable. That's cool. But I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing this for myself and I'm doing this to teach. I'm doing this to be an example to people and the kids who come from where I'm from, and grew up like how I grew up, thinking they have no choice, thinking they have no hope. And I'm like, yeah, you got hope. You got choices. Your choices may be hard, your choices may be difficult, but still and yet you have a choice to not only do better, but to be better. And I'm providing this example that you ain't got to game bang, you ain't got to sell dope, you ain't got to rap, you ain't got to play sports in order to make it out the hood and be successful and find some type of happiness. You know what I mean?
Mm. Right.
And still and yet, because I work and I have a job, I have to take care of myself and I have to pay for these artists, it'll be beneficial if I also get paid from, writing comic books. So then from going to shows and talking to people, I found out the best ways, or I am continuing to find out the best ways in order to monetize my talent to where,
Right.
I can also, make money and benefit off, all the pain and the struggles and the therapy and this art that I've created and developed, for everybody to enjoy. Now, to
Mm.
the degree or the degree that you don't want to promote yourself or, go to shows or do content or social media content, that's okay. There's no right or wrong answer to that because it's all in your intentions. It's all your, sometimes you can't really dictate what you do. Sometimes life dictates to you, what you can and can't do on a certain amount of time. But I say just do what you can. And me learning about creating content and creating new stories and going and talking to people networking, that's I'm enjoying that process because I'm learning how to use CapCut, how to make my own videos. I'm learning how to talk to people, network people, to especially when you grow up where I'm growing from and you kind of like almost antisocial. You don't really like talking to people or putting yourself out there, don't like
Mm.
being social or charismatic. It gets you out of that shell to get you to, hey, how you doing? Shaking hands and introducing yourself. So you learn people skills, you learn social skills, a lot of things that, people that come from where I'm come, or, they don't really learn, or they only comfortable with people who from where they from and talk like how they talk and walk how they walk. Like, nah, man, to be successful in this world, you got to walk in rooms to where you do not fit in at all. But because of your personality, because of your charisma, because of your openness, because of your honesty, because of the way you talk and comprehend, and you can give and dialogue and back and forth and all like that, and talk and conversate and communicate. That's what makes a difference. That's what the difference between success and failure is, depending on what your definition of success and failure is. A lot of times you just want to make a comic book and don't really want to talk to nobody. Like me, honestly, all I want to do is sit in my room and write. That's all I want to do. So if I can do all these things and create this content and go to shows, but at the end of the day, I just get signed by, whoever, Dark Horse, Image, DC, Sky, whoever. And they just put me in position. All you gotta do is send. That's all I want to do. But I still see my heroes: Larry Houston, David Mack, Jason Aaron. Anybody. They still go to shows on a regular basis. They still go to these Comic Cons. They still go to these fests. They still go to these gatherings, and still sit at these tables, and still let the people interact with the people. Still say their comics, and still be able to give advice and to help and give your words of encouragement and take these pictures. I'm like, wait a minute. So these people who don't necessarily have to do any of those things, your name is big enough. Jason Aaron, you don't have to do nothing. David Mack, you don't have to do nothing but sit in your room and write or draw. But still, and yet you still take the extra time and the extra effort to come to these conventions and sit and talk and meet your fans. So I'm like, to me, to them, that doesn't seem like work to me. That seems like it's a pleasure for them to do it. And that's one of the reasons. That's one of the benefits of being a creator, especially in the comic book industry, that you get to sit down and get direct feedback from the audience, from the people that enjoy, what you're doing. So that means a lot. So yeah, I'm not doing this for money. Money is nice, and I'll take it as it comes. But that's not my main motivating factor. My main motivating factor is personal joy, personal self-fulfillment, personal happiness. That's why I do it. Now, if people can dig my stuff too and pay me for it, okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not gonna be mad at that. But that's not what I'm doing. Money's not motivating me. Happiness is motivating me.
Awesome. And we're just nearing the end of this incredible interview, Jamal. So the final question, I know, but the final question for this interview, and you've probably already answered it in numerous other questions, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. So, with everything you have learned in your life, with everything you've done in creating Anansi Comics, the Dark Ones, Godblade, and building your brand as an author and as a creator in the comic book industry, what is your word of wisdom to other creators, to other storytellers who want to get into this industry but are unsure of how to do it?
Start. For one, because there's a lot in that. It is, but it's not. Work on your craft, man. Because you don't want to pour all that money or energy into something that you half-assed at. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're a car mechanic and the car broke down and you only fixed the engine, but you didn't fix the radiator. You didn't fix the oil. I don't even know a whole bunch about cars. But it's a whole bunch of things you ain't fixing. The car can run down the street, but then it's gonna stop. Why? Because you didn't work on your craft. You didn't fix the things that need to be fixed. If you're a writer, work on that craft. Get constructive critique from other writers, other people that you know and trust. If you're an artist, same thing. Get that constructive critique from people you know and trust. But then you have to start and set up goals for yourself and then accomplish those goals one by one. I mean, for me, this is a dream, man. This is writing comics or writing stories. This is a dream come true. So all the goals I set up for myself and all the things I accomplished, it's a pleasure to do it. It's like ticking off a list. So you're gonna go Disneyland or you can go to Magic Mountain. It's like that's how it was when it was go to LA Comic Con or go to San Diego Comic Fest. It's like, ooh, really? You know what I mean? So those are my motivating factors. But for us, at the end of the day, you're there to sell your comics. And when you sell your comics and somebody buys them and then they read them, you make sure what they read and what they appreciate and what they spend their hard-earned money on is worth it. You don't want to provide them with some crap because you might get them to buy the first time, but they damn sure ain't gonna buy it the second time. They can walk right past your table. You don't want that to happen. So work on your craft. It's not just, oh, I'm a comic book writer. This is, oh, I'm a comic. It's different between, telling a friend of mine, it's different between American actors to a degree. I'm generalizing. It's different between American actors and European actors. Typically, generally, in America, people want to become an actor. Why? Because they want to be popular. They want to be rich. In Europe, they want to be actor because of the craft. They enjoy the process. They study Macbeth, or they study Shakespeare. You know, they studied all these plays and these characters and these people for their whole life. And they're like, oh, I get to finally sit down and speak the words that Shakespeare wrote 100 years. That passion, that joy, not just about I want to be famous, I want to be popular, I want to get money. No, I appreciate the craft, I appreciate the story. I appreciate the story behind why he wrote this story and the real history behind it. I really studied the character, the circumstances behind it, and I'm really appreciating. I engross myself, I put myself in this role. That's why it's different between you when you watch American shows and you watch European or British shows with the BBC. It's a different level of acting. Even actors that come over from Europe and Britain, it's a different skill set, a more refined approach to how they their character development, and how they reflect those characters in their acting. It's you can see it, like when you read a book and you can read one book. I don't want to compare artists, I mean writers, because that's not cool,
Right.
but when you read one book over another, it's like, man, this was cool, but this one is like boom. It's a difference. You know what I'm saying? So that which you want to get towards, and that what I think will make the difference between you being more successful than another person. Don't do this for the money. Do it because you appreciate the craft. And when you put that much time and study and hard work into studying your craft and developing that talent, then on the back end, everything else will come. Because people are, oh, this is dope. Nah, forget that. This is talent. And that speaks volumes.
Absolutely 100%, Jamal. And with that, my viewers and listeners, we conclude another amazing comic interview here on the channel. I want to give a huge thank you to Jamal Anansi for coming on the show, making his official debut on the channel, as well as being the first of what I am going to call the LA Comicon lineup. So, Jamal, thank you so much for coming on the show. Now, before we end, where can people find you on social media to reach out to talk with you, and where can people go and purchase copies of your comics?
Well, they can reach out to me on Jamal_Anansi on Instagram. That's JAMAL_ANANSI. That's on Instagram. On internet, you can find me on my website, janansicomics.com. janansicomics.com. You can check out, my stories. You can read them. You can view them. You can purchase them. Everything from there.
I will link all those down below in the description of this video. And don't be surprised if you see me doing a comic impressions video of the Dark One, the Chronicles, on the channel sometime in the future, because I do plan to do that in the future. So just be on the lookout, my viewers and listeners. But until then, make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below what was your favorite part of the interview. And I want to give again a huge thank you to Jamal for coming out here on the show. We wish him the very best from one creator to another. And as always, my fellow subscribers, I wish you all a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world.